Afternoon, Manhattanville. This is the first episode ever of Writer's Block, and yeah, just to get things started, we're going to try to do this every week. We're going to have a new writer or a poet from Manhattanville, or we might try to get regional. Try to get a writer on every week to share some of their work and all the glory of their marginalia and their process, and then we're going to try to have a discussion about their work. So this week we've got one of my personal favorites.
Wow.
We've got Steve Willis. It is an honor to have him on the show because he's just such a fantastic poet. He has a really like poignant, deep, rich, very rich, very rich work.
I'm happy to hear you feel that way, Mike. That's pretty awesome. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Definitely happy to be here. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And your show, and I think this is something great. I'm really excited.
I'm excited to have you here. And Steve has given me a few of his poems, which I've read through this weekend and sort of marked up. And we're going to have the pleasure of getting to listen to him perform his work, and then we're going to talk about him.
Sure.
So
any particular one you want me to start first?
I was actually hoping first just to get a few words from you.
Sure.
You're from Chicago.
Yes. My name is Stephen Willis. A lot of people in Chicago I go by. It's like important for you to have a stage name and perform as poetry on the south side of Chicago. And so when I was in high school, so I was a senior, I first got introduced to sort of kind of the south side poetry scene. There's a poetry scene, a slam poetry scene that happens in Chicago that is, of course, associated with Louder Than a Bomb, which is the largest teen poetry festival in the world. And so, but once after that, you don't really have anything else. And so I got a part of this organization called Poet, or People of Extraordinary Talent. And it was the first time I was really introduced to a life of performance poetry outside of high school. And so once you do that, you're basically venturing into an entertainment career. And so it was important to have a stage name. And I was a pretty pompous 18-year-old. You know what I mean? I thought I was really like God sent to poetry. And so I named myself J.S. Bach, which, of course, is Johann Sebastian Bach, who is, of course, a classical music composer. And I named myself that under the belief that I was making classics. That was my tagline. I'm making classic poetry. This stuff is going to go down in history. So I took on that name. And that sort of kind of grew into a lot of different ideas. And I think now that I'm here in New York, they know me more as Heath Legend, which is a name that I came up with after I was haunted in my dreams by Heath Ledger, who told me my freshman year of college that if I wanted to be successful, I could possibly end up like him. He did it for a week.
That's creepy.
That is extremely creepy. And
coming through.
I just totally told him, "You want to bet?" And just sort of kind of ventured into. At the time, it was rap. I thought I wanted to be a rapper. I think we all think we want to be a rapper
at some point.
So I sort of kind of took on the name Heath Legend, but was really an alter ego, really, of J.S. Bach, really more of opening to my more hip-hop-esque poems. So whenever I say that I'm going to be J.S. Bach, that I'm probably going to be going more literature. Or if ever I say I'm going to be Heath Legend, I'm probably going to be going more in a hip-hop style. So that's of all my different pseudonyms that you'll hear throughout my career, or probably search me for. Those are the two major ones.
All right. So now that you bring this up, there's one poem that you've got beat writers, and there's a lot of I see it as a very poignant literature poem, and also as a very rap poem. Who would you perform this as? Would this be a performance by Heath Legend, or would this be a performance by J.S. Bach?
That is a great question. And Beat Writers is, in my opinion, the best thing I've ever written. It is sort of kind of my tag poem. You know, if I want anybody to know who I am, that's the poem that I send, because of exactly what you named. It is a mixture of very hip hop, urban lifestyle meets academia, and I think that type of eclectic, eclectic marriage between those two sort of kind of describe me. You know, I am a person who at one point will indulge into all of the old romantic literature at one point, and then at another point I want to talk about all of Jay-Z's albums and which one are the best. You know, so what Beat Writers was an attempt to do was, it was an attempt to marry those two things, those two loves, and particularly through exploring the beat writer generations of authors, which I'm sure you see in the piece.
Yeah, you see a lot of references to it. In fact, how about you read this?
Sure.
I really want to hear this one. You say this is your tag poem, so I think it's an appropriate place for us to start.
Beat Writers for Amiri Baraka. I saw the best minds of my generation starving, hysterical, naked, and left for dead, but were destined to make it. Ran the Negro streets with an angry fix. Crack in their nostrils and pavements, the worst conditions, but were destined for greatness. The gunshots from the block influenced this poem's cadence. Living paycheck to paycheck has taught me most of my patience. The loss of familiar faces has taught me crime is invasive, the source of my inspiration. A decade before Reagan, a DJ and Cool Rasta, Bombada, and a couple monsters helped father a generation of black epics and sagas. Roger was raised by Big Mama, but learned crack commandments from Papa. Tasha bumped the chief in Waka while guns when blocker. Don't assume that bass vibrations can't be felt in the womb when rock music fornicated with blues, the birth of the trap beat generation. The babies of boom, equipped with the African traditions, and America's doomed to sculptors of black culture. In your bohemian ways, your Hindu-Gnostic approach will left this boy in a maze. Your B-boy counterculture was just more than a phase. It was the cardboard box in which we would raise and elevate to a freeze. D-boy clocking for fiends who'll take the Mac to your noodle. If you reach for the cheese, he want the cream. Soliloquies of the grieved and the thieved, the beat writers who wrote poems to beats, the Kerouacs of the concrete, the Ginsbergs to the curb, the William S. to their burrows, the masters of spoken word, Cassidy's of the cuckoo's nest, and the one-slipping birds, who haiku'd the obscene, who free-versed the absurd. There's no way you can reverse the bridge between the music and people we wrote, or the religious guns tongues that we tote. Just take note of this dope rhythmic quote that can summarize the ethos of the young, gifted, and black growing up cutthroat, the ethnographies of poverty that we coat, and metaphors and similes to help cope in beloved communities that are deficient of hope. That's why the young in the music elope. There's no way you can denote the syncopation that gave voice to the streets, so black ballers from the poet elite will order canonized seat, right next to Solomon and Sinclair Belize, the beat writers who wrote poems to beats. Lyrical vandals who graffitied the streets, the beat writers who wrote poems to beats. Gold rope chains and Adidas on feet, the beat writers who wrote poems to beats. Who drove in 6'4" Impalas, put the screens in the seats, the beat writers who wrote poems to beats.
I love it. Thank you.
No problem.
That was a great performance.
Thank you.
So let's just readdress that question. So who do you think this is more of? This is clearly.
I was realizing as I was saying that I probably didn't answer your question. I would probably say it's more Heath Ledger. Mm-hmm. And it's more Heath Ledger because Heath Ledger as a character takes on a more arrogant stance. Mm-hmm. And as you can see, I dedicated the poem to Amiri Baraka. Mm-hmm. And Amiri Baraka, and the reason why I did that, and when I perform the piece live, I usually talk about who Amiri Baraka is and sort of give a background to why he's important. And how it's so many ways that you can describe how important Amiri Baraka is. But to the poem, he was number one, a huge publisher to a lot of the major beat writers. Mm-hmm. So he was a huge publisher to Allen Ginsberg's and others. And also his very rhythmic cadence that he takes to his poetry is one of the first instances that we see from rap. Mm-hmm. So it goes from Amiri Baraka to the last poets to then rap music. And so that sort of kind of arrogant style, that sort of kind of hip-hop-esque style would definitely be more Heath Ledger.